So can you tell me a little bit more about the admission process? What you think the applicants have to focus on this year when they are applying?
Yeah, and you know, there's a lot of detail we can go into. So let me kind of give you a broad overview first, and then we can take it from there if you want. And you know, I think our admissions process, the way that I think about admissions philosophically, and how we do it in practice, is probably not too dissimilar than most of the other major programs. There might be some nuances that we can talk about though. But you know, I think that you know when I think about candidates, my feeling in my mind is that whenever I read an application, I always want to know that they can answer three questions predominantly, and hopefully the answer to those questions is a yes. And these are fairly obvious, but it's worth getting into. I think the first is. At a very fundamental level, we're an educational institution, so we want to make sure that everybody coming in can perform well academically, and or at least withstand the rigor of the program in a lot of different dimensions. And so one of the components is obviously, in a very practical way, the data behind academics, and this is maybe the most objective part of the whole admissions process, but we look at obviously academic history and test scores for that. And so if a person seems like they're reasonably good at those sorts of things, it probably gives us an indication that they'll also be reasonably good in the classroom, just from a pure academic level. And if the answer to that question is yes, I put that to the side. And the second an independent question that I have is, do I think this person will be a great future professional, regardless of what they decide that they want to do? And really not just the first job out, but for the next 30 or 40 years of their professional life. That's a very different question than the academic question. And you can imagine there are plenty of people who are great students, but might find difficulty crafting a career for themselves, and vice versa. You might find a person who will have a great career but will struggle in the classroom. So that's why I say they're independent. And so for that, obviously, we look at some past performance. What has a person's work experience been like? What is both the quality and quantity of that experience? And perhaps what attributes and skills and talents they've accrued over time because of this experience that will benefit a future employer, but also perhaps benefit their classmates. That's not quite as objective though, because we're getting a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds. It's easy to look at a transcript or a test score. It's a little bit more difficult to look at resumes and try to look at those characteristics a student has from a professional perspective and then have it translated down the road. Because my question is not just have they been successful in the professional domain, but will they continue to be great at whatever they choose to do? And so that's kind of our projection into the future. But let's say the answer to that question is yes, then it becomes very subjective, which is something a lot of students have, a little fear about. But it's all the other things that we ask for. You write essays, you have interviews, and what beyond the data points of an application can you present as an argument to any admissions committee about why you deserve a seat in that class? And I think a lot of that has to do with what you bring to the table for the benefit of your classmates. That may or may not be academic, it may or may not be even a professional skill, but something that allows you as the applicant to say, here's what I'm going to bring to my teammates, to my group mates, to all the people within the Trojan community, and then perhaps by extension some future employers. So as we go through those questions, it gets progressively more subjective, that's for sure, but the answer has to be yes to all those questions. So it can't just be that I've got good test scores but I lack somewhere else, because if or I have great experience but I'm not going to be a fit in the classroom. I mean, schools that get a decent number of applications will always have enough candidates who have pretty good scores, pretty good grades, pretty good experience. Then the question is, what else do you have?
Right, right. That makes a lot of sense.